The forest was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that felt safe. It was heavy, filled with the whispers of unseen eyes and the creak of ancient trees. Ilara ran her fingers along the bark as she moved, feeling the rough texture against her palms, but it offered no comfort. Around her, the pack moved in a tight formation, circling her with expressions that twisted between suspicion and fear. They were her kin, in a way, yet their eyes held something darker: doubt, resentment, and something she could not name. "You shouldn't have come here." Kale's voice broke the silence. He was tall, his dark cloak blending with the shadows around them, his expression hard as stone. "You don't belong in the woods at night, Ilara. You never have." "I belong wherever I am," Ilara replied, her voice steady, though her heart thumped in her chest. She had always known she was different. The pack never fully accepted her, not because she lacked skill, but because there was a fire inside her they could neither control nor predict. And fire frightened them. The path ended at the edge of a clearing. There, before them, rose the Forbidden Temple. Its black stone walls shimmered in the dim moonlight, carved with runes that seemed to crawl and shift when one looked too closely. The doors were massive, sealed tight, and the air around them hummed with a power that made the hairs on Ilara's arms stand on end. "This is where it ends for you," Kale said, stepping forward, his tone sharp as a blade. The pack began to close in. Ilara's stomach sank. She had hoped, maybe foolishly, that they would trust her, that they would see her strength, not her differences. But hope had no place here. Before she could speak again, the pack pushed her forward. Her feet stumbled over roots and rocks, and she felt herself moving closer to the temple doors. Panic rose in her chest. "Wait, please," she shouted, but the pack's hands were firm, their push unyielding. The moment she crossed the threshold, the doors began to close. Her voice caught in her throat as she tried to reach for the handles, but it was too late. With a thunderous echo, the doors sealed shut behind her. Inside, the temple was unlike anything Ilara had ever seen. Darkness clung to the walls, yet light pulsed from the floor, tracing pathways that led deeper into the heart of the building. Shadows danced and twisted, forming shapes that seemed to whisper her name. She took a cautious step forward. Each footfall echoed in the cavernous hall, mingling with the faint, melodic hum of the temple itself. It felt alive, as though it breathed around her. Waiting. Watching. A sudden flash of movement made her spin, but there was nothing, only the shadows, shifting and folding into themselves. She clenched her fists, trying to steady her racing heart. "Why am I here?" she whispered. Her voice sounded small against the vast walls. "What do you want from me?" Then, in the silence, a figure appeared. It was a projection, perhaps a memory of someone long gone. A queen, regal and commanding, her eyes bright as stars. "You are not here by accident," the vision said, her voice echoing in Ilara's mind. "You carry the blood of the forgotten. The power of your ancestors sleeps within you, and this temple will awaken it." Ilara felt a shiver run through her. She had always sensed something different about herself, a pulse of power she could not name, but she had never understood it until this moment. The vision faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the temple. Ahead, the corridors twisted, each turn revealing more carvings and symbols that glimmered faintly. Some were familiar, like stories her grandmother had told her in whispers, legends of kings and queens who had walked in shadows, of battles fought in silence, of curses that lingered like smoke. She walked cautiously, her fingers brushing against the walls. The air felt heavier here, thick with magic and history. A faint glow appeared up ahead, illuminating a central chamber. At its center stood a throne, black and carved from a single piece of stone. On the altar before it rested a crown, gleaming despite the shadows. Its beauty was impossible to describe, ornate, yet simple. as if it had been made to fit her specifically. Elara approached slowly. She could feel a pull toward it, a magnetic tug that made her heart ache. The crown seemed to hum in response, whispering promises she could barely hear. Power, belonging, destiny. Her hand hovered over it. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. What would it mean to take it? Would it make her the ruler of something she didn't yet understand? Could she survive the power it offered? Before she could decide, the temple shifted. The walls trembled, and the floor seemed to ripple beneath her feet. Shadows gathered in the corners, forming shapes she could not identify, some monstrous, some elegant, all watching. "You are not yet ready." A deep voice echoed through the chamber, shaking the very air. It was not cruel, nor kind, but impossibly old. "The path you seek is yours, but it demands more than courage. It demands understanding. It demands sacrifice. The path you seek, in lies." Elara's fingers brushed the crown. The instant she made contact, a warmth spread through her body, as if the temple itself was welcoming her. Her mind filled with visions. Battles fought by ancestors. Promises broken and kept. Faces she had never seen, but recognized as family. The crown pulsed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, and she felt a strength she had never known. Tears pricked her eyes. Not from fear, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of purpose. She realized she had been searching for something all her life. Acceptance, power, a place where she truly belonged. And perhaps, for the first time, she had found it. But the temple was not finished testing her. Shadows formed into shapes, circling her, whispering doubts and fears. "You are alone. They betrayed you. You are unworthy." Elara closed her eyes, drawing in a steady breath. She let the warmth of the crown fill her. Let the hum of the temple guide her. "I am not afraid," she whispered. "I am ready." The shadows recoiled slightly at her words, then surged forward again, testing her resolve. Each movement was a trial of will, a battle fought without a single weapon. And with each test, Elara's confidence grew. She felt the power within her solidify, a fire that could not be quenched. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments. Time felt strange within the temple. Eventually, the shadows dissipated, leaving Elara standing before the throne. She lifted the crown, feeling its weight both on her fingers and in her soul. The air shimmered around her, and the temple seemed to exhale, a sound like wind through ancient trees. The crown settled onto her head, warm and alive, as if it recognized her as its rightful bearer. For the first time in her life, Elara felt truly whole. She looked around the chamber, no longer afraid of the darkness or the whispers. She had faced them, and she had not broken. Yet even as she stood there, crowned and transformed, a chill ran down her spine. From somewhere deep within the temple, a whisper echoed, softer than the wind, yet clear as crystal. "They have sent you in unprepared. Soon, the world outside will tremble, and so will your heart." Elara's fingers tightened around the throne. The power of the crown pulsed through her veins, and with it came a new awareness. Her journey had only begun. The pack who had betrayed her, the kingdom that had ignored her, and the shadows of her past, all of it awaited her. And she would meet it not as the girl they had cast aside, but as someone far greater. With one final glance at the temple walls, she whispered to herself, "I am ready. Whatever comes." Outside, the forest waited. The pack would soon learn that the girl they pushed into darkness was no longer the same. And deep within the temple, unseen eyes watched, acknowledging her rise, and perhaps, silently, the beginning of a new reckoning. The crown on Elara's head pulsed with a warmth that felt alive. Each beat was like the rhythm of her own heart, and each pulse whispered secrets she had never known. The temple was no longer silent. The walls hummed with a quiet energy, and the shadows moved differently now, not to frighten her, but as if waiting for her to act. She stepped forward from the throne, her eyes tracing the corridors that twisted endlessly before her. Light glimmered faintly along the runes, revealing doors and hidden pathways. The temple was testing her not with physical trials, but with challenges of the mind and spirit. She could feel it in the air. Every step she took would shape her destiny. A chamber appeared ahead, glowing with a pale, silver light. Alara entered, and immediately, the air felt heavier. In the center of the room stood a mirror, tall as a doorway, with edges carved in shapes she did not recognize. As she approached, the reflection in the mirror shifted. It was no longer her own face, but a version of her she had never seen before. Confident, regal, powerful, but alone. The mirror whispered, soft and insistent, "This is who you could be, but only if you embrace what they fear in you. Only if you surrender your doubt." Alara shivered. Doubt had been her companion for years, a quiet shadow at the edge of her mind. Now, to move forward, she would have to face it fully. She reached out, fingers brushing the glass, and the reflection spoke louder, echoing inside her head. "Do you wish to be powerful? To wear the crown as it was meant? Or will you remain small, as they have always seen you?" Her hand pressed harder against the mirror. Fear rose like a tide, but so did determination. "I am not small," she said aloud, voice firm. "I am everything they never believed I could be." The mirror rippled like water, and suddenly, the reflection spoke her name. It was soft, almost gentle, yet filled with authority. The figure moved from the glass, stepping closer in perfect imitation of her movements. "I am part of you," it said. "The part they tried to bury. The part that can command shadows, bend the world, and reclaim what was lost. But you must learn balance. Power without control will consume you." Alara nodded, though her heart pounded in confusion. She had always wanted to be strong, yet the weight of this responsibility was heavier than she imagined. The crown's energy flowed through her veins, warm but insistent, demanding understanding, demanding mastery. The mirror vanished in a wave of silver light, revealing another passage behind it. Alara hesitated only a moment before stepping through. The next chamber was dark, colder than the previous, and lined with statues of warriors frozen in silent battle. Their faces were stern, their eyes carved as if they followed her every move. A voice echoed in the chamber. This one, older, sharper, and full of gravity. To claim the crown, you must face what you fear most. Not outside, but inside. Ilara's chest tightened. Memories she had tried to forget surged forward. The pack's rejection, the whispers behind her back, the nights she had wandered alone in the forest, wondering why she had been born different. The statues shifted suddenly, their stone eyes glowing with a faint blue light. From the shadows emerged shapes, visions of the pack confronting her, accusing her, their faces twisted with anger and disappointment. "You do not belong," they said in unison. "You are not one of us." Her breath caught. The room seemed to shrink around her, the shadows pressing close, trying to make her small again. But she straightened, letting the warmth of the crown remind her of who she was becoming. "I do belong," she said firmly. "I belong to myself, and I am more than you ever believed." The shadows recoiled, hissing like wind over jagged stones. The statue's glow intensified, and the crown pulsed in response, sending a wave of strength through her body. Fear and doubt pressed against her, but she stood tall. Every beat of her heart resonated with power she had never imagined she could command. The statues then moved differently, Instead of threatening her, they raised their stone weapons, bowing in unison. "You are ready," the voice said, reverberating through the chamber. "But readiness is not enough. Wisdom must guide your power." A final passage revealed itself at the far end of the room, leading upward. Alara climbed, her footsteps echoing through the hollow halls, until she reached a circular chamber at the top of the temple. Here, the ceiling opened to the night sky, stars glittering above like scattered jewels. In the center floated a small, glowing orb. Its light pulsed with the same rhythm as her crown. The orb spoke without words, filling her mind with images. Kingdoms lost to war, rulers betrayed by those closest to them, lives broken by curses no one could undo. And then it showed her a path forward, a way to heal what had been broken, to reclaim power, to transform despair into strength. Alara reached out, touching the orb. A warmth surged through her, brighter and stronger than before. Her vision blurred, and when it cleared, she could see not only the temple, but far beyond it, the forests, the rivers, the mountains, and the distant lands where the pack still lingered. She saw them clearly, each face etched with fear and awe, realizing too late what they had set in motion. Her heart ached at first. She had once longed for their approval, for acceptance. But now, she understood something essential. Her worth was not determined by them, nor by anyone else. She was her own sovereign, her own master. The crown was not just a symbol of power, it was a mirror of herself, reflecting everything she could be. And yet, even in this moment of triumph, the temple reminded her of the challenges still to come. From the ceiling, shadows gathered, forming shapes she did not recognize, figures tall and impossibly graceful, their eyes like burning embers. They were guardians, perhaps, or remnants of the temple's ancient magic, and they watched her silently. "You have done well," the deep, resonant voice said again. "But the outside world is not yet ready for you. The crown has awakened your power, but it has also awakened desire. Desire in those who would claim it for themselves, and fear in those who have lost to it." Ilara's chest tightened. She had felt power, yes, but she had not yet felt the full weight of responsibility. The crown did not simply grant authority, it demanded vigilance, courage, and, above all, a heart willing to face betrayal and challenge. A sudden gust of wind swirled in the chamber, carrying with it whispers from outside. Names, warnings, threats, and pleas mingled together in a chaotic murmur. The pack, the kingdom, the enemies she had yet to meet. All of them would confront her soon. Her gaze rose to the stars, and she felt something shift within her, a clarity she had never experienced. This was not just about survival, or even power. It was about shaping the world in a way that honored those who had been forgotten, who had been cast aside, who had suffered quietly in the shadows. And then, from the darkness behind her, a new voice rang clear, sharp, and deliberate. Her heart skipped a beat. The name was familiar, yet it carried weight she did not recognize. She turned, but the shadows had already shifted. The figure was gone, leaving only a faint echo that vibrated through her chest. The crown pulsed again, stronger this time, as if responding to the presence she had sensed. Alara placed a hand over it, feeling the energy radiate through her. She was no longer the girl the pack had pushed into darkness. She was more powerful, more aware, more alive. Yet even in her strength, she could not ignore the warning in that voice. Someone, or something, waited for her outside. A test that the temple could not prepare her for. And it would arrive soon, whether she was ready or not. Alara took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. She had survived the temple. She had faced the shadows of her past and emerged stronger. She had claimed the crown, and with it, a power that could change everything. But the real world awaited, and it would not bow quietly. With one last glance at the glowing orb, she whispered, "I am ready for whatever comes." The temple's walls shimmered in response, and the corridors seemed to shift one final time, opening a path downward. Elara began to walk toward it, each step filled with purpose, determination, and the quiet fire of destiny. Outside, the moon cast long shadows across the forest. The pack still lingered near the temple entrance, their eyes wide with fear and awe, sensing that the girl they had abandoned was no longer the same. And deep within the temple, unseen and patient, the shadows waited, watching, waiting, knowing that the crown had awakened more than power. It had awakened a force that would shape the world. Elara's journey was far from over, and as the night wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint echoes of the pack and the kingdom beyond, one truth remained clear. The girl who had been pushed into darkness would emerge not as a victim, but as a sovereign who could command destiny itself. Elara stepped out of the temple, and the night air felt sharper than she remembered. The forest was quiet, but this time, it was different. It seemed to bend around her presence, the shadows retreating slightly, as if acknowledging her power. The crown on her head gleamed faintly under the moonlight, warm against her temples, its weight both comforting and commanding. The pack was there, waiting. They had not moved into the temple, sensing, perhaps, the force that had transformed her. Kale stepped forward, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "Elara." His voice faltered, hesitant. You have changed." She studied him, noting the flicker of guilt in his gaze, the unspoken question of what they had done. For a long moment, she did not speak. She allowed the silence to stretch, letting the crown hum against her thoughts. It was a sound of authority, of destiny, and it reminded her that she no longer needed their approval to be strong. "You doubted me," she said finally, voice calm but firm. "You pushed me into a place you thought would destroy me. Yet here I stand, not broken, not lost, and still, I am capable of mercy." The pack shuffled uneasily, lowering their heads, aware of the distance that now existed between them. They had once been her family, but betrayal had carved a hollow place in her heart. And yet, part of her still longed for their loyalty, not because she needed them, but because she wished they could recognize her truth. Kale stepped closer, cautiously. I never imagined." His words trailed off. "We thought you were." He could not finish the sentence, and the unsaid words hung heavily in the cool night air. "You thought I was powerless," Elara finished for him. "You were wrong." The forest rustled around them, as if affirming her words. The pack glanced at one another, unsure whether to retreat or submit. The crown's presence radiated a quiet authority, one that demanded respect without a word. But Elara knew that power alone was not enough. Strength without wisdom could lead to ruin, and the world outside the temple would test her in ways the shadows never could. The pack began to speak in whispers, their voices low, hesitant. They asked questions they had never dared before. Where had she gone? What had happened inside the temple? What had changed her? Elara answered only what she wished, revealing glimpses of the trials she had faced, the visions she had seen, and the power she had embraced. Kale watched her closely. He had always been the most skeptical, the most critical, yet now he could not deny her presence. There was a tension between them that neither fully understood. It was not resentment alone, nor admiration, it was something far more fragile, a thread of connection that had been tested and strengthened in fire. "You will need allies," Kale said at last, breaking the silence. "Beyond the pack, beyond these woods, there are those who will see your rise as a threat." Elara nodded. She had sensed it even from within the temple. The world beyond was not ready for her, and some would never accept her rule. But she was no longer afraid. The crown had given her clarity, a vision of what could be achieved if she led with both heart and wisdom. "We will stand with you," Kale continued, his voice firmer now. "But you must tell us what to do." Ilara looked at the pack. Their hesitation was clear. They still feared the unknown power she now wielded. Yet she saw something else in their eyes as well. Hope. The faint spark of loyalty that could be restored if she guided them wisely. "You will follow me," she said, her voice carrying the weight of command. "Not because you must, but because you choose to. And in that choice, we will all find our strength." The pack bowed their heads, acknowledging her authority. Kale's gaze met hers, and in that silent moment, something shifted. Trust was being rebuilt, not fully, but enough to move forward. As they began the journey back through the forest, the crown pulsed gently, almost in rhythm with Ilara's heartbeat. She could feel its connection to the land, to the unseen forces that lingered in the shadows. The trees seemed to lean closer, the wind carrying whispers of the old magic that had waited for her awakening. Hours passed as they traveled. The forest gradually thinned, revealing the first hints of the kingdom beyond. Villages lay scattered among rolling hills, and the distant lights of towers glimmered against the horizon. Yet even here, Ilara sensed unease. Whispers of her emergence had already begun to spread. Rumors travel fast in a kingdom ruled by fear and ambition, and some would see her not as a queen, but as a challenge to be crushed. At the edge of a small village, a messenger awaited. He carried a seal of the court, one she had never seen before, and his eyes widened when he saw her crown. "Your Highness," he stammered, bowing low. "The council, they've sent word. They do not know what to make of you. They request your presence." Ilara's lips curved into a faint smile. The real challenge was beginning. She had faced the temple, the shadows, and the trials within. Now, she would face the world that had tried to confine her. Kale fell into step beside her. "You will not go alone," he said quietly. "The crown is yours, yes, but there are forces you cannot yet see. Let me walk with you." She glanced at him, and for the first time, the distance between them felt less like a wall and more like a bridge. "Then, walk with me," she replied. "But know this. I will not let anyone dictate my path. Not now. Not ever." The village stirred as they entered, the people sensing something different, something powerful. Children peeked from behind doors, elders whispered to one another, and merchants froze mid-step. All eyes eventually turned to her, to the crown, to the presence that radiated not just authority, but destiny. Ilara held her head high. She could feel the whispers of the past of the pack, of those who had doubted her, but she let them pass, leaving only strength and clarity in their place. The crown was not a burden. It was a guide. It connected her to the magic that flowed through the kingdom, to the legacy of those who had come before. But not all eyes were filled with awe. From the shadowed edges of the village, a figure watched, cloaked and silent, their face hidden. They observed Ilara with keen interest. They did not move, but Ilara felt their presence. The crown pulsed sharply, warning her that someone, or something, was testing her even now. She ignored the chill of unease for the moment, focusing instead on the path ahead. The council awaited, and with them, the first true test of her authority. She had been shaped by the temple, forged in shadow and fire, and now the world would have to bend or be remade. Kale's hand brushed against hers as they walked. It was a small gesture, but it carried reassurance, a quiet promise that she was not alone. For the first time in years, Ilara felt the balance between power and connection, strength and trust. They reached the gates of the capital as dawn broke, casting long streaks of light across the stone walls. Guards lined the entrance, their eyes wide at the sight of the crown. Hesitant, but compelled to step aside. The city was waking, and the whispers of her return had already begun to ripple through its streets. Alara paused, feeling the weight of history, of expectation, of everything the crown demanded. She had faced the darkness within and emerged stronger. She had the pack behind her, at least for now. And she had allies yet unseen. But she knew this. The crown was not just a symbol of authority. It was a test. And the world outside the temple would be far more challenging than anything she had faced inside. As they moved forward, the shadowed figure from the village reappeared at the gates, lingering where the sunlight could not touch. Their eyes met hers briefly, a spark of recognition passing between them. Alara felt a shiver run through her, a sense that the journey she had begun was only the first step. And then, with a deep breath, she lifted her chin and walked toward the council chambers. The crown pulsed once, sharply, as if affirming her choice. She was ready. But even as she entered the hall, voices rose around her, questioning, doubting, challenging. Some sought to kneel, others to test her, and in the back of her mind, the shadowed figure's gaze lingered, reminding her that power attracts both devotion and danger. Alara's hand touched the crown. She could feel its warmth, its energy, its promise. And in that moment, she understood fully. She had survived the temple, awakened her power, and claimed her place. Yet the world beyond demanded not just strength, but wisdom, courage, and the ability to forgive as well as command. Her eyes swept across the council, then to Kale, then to the distant shadows lurking beyond the hall. A faint smile touched her lips. The trials of the outside had begun, and she would meet them all, not as the girl who had been cast aside, but as the sovereign she was meant to be. And somewhere, hidden in the city's shadowed corners, the figure waited, watching, knowing that Alara's rise was only the beginning of a story far greater and far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The council chambers were cold and grand, built of stone that seemed older than the kingdom itself. Torches flickered along the walls, casting shadows that twisted and danced in rhythm with Alara's heartbeat. She walked slowly, the crown on her head glinting in the dim light, radiating a quiet authority that demanded attention. Every eye in the hall turned toward her, some filled with awe, some with skepticism, and others with thinly veiled hostility. At the head of the chamber sat the council leader, a man with sharp eyes and an older face, lined with worry and wisdom. "Alara," he said, his voice steady but tense, "you stand before us, claiming a power we do not yet understand. You have returned from the temple, transformed. But what authority do you truly hold?" Alara met his gaze steadily. The crown pulsed once, softly, as if reinforcing her resolve. "I hold the authority of my lineage," she said calmly. "The temple has awakened the power that has slept in my blood for generations. But authority is not given. It is proven, through deeds, through courage, and through the choices we make." A murmur rose through the hall. Some council members leaned forward, intrigued, while others shifted uneasily in their seats. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes a room feel alive, electric, and dangerous. Kale stepped beside her, his presence steadying, a silent promise that she was not alone. "She speaks the truth," he said. "I have witnessed her trials. I have seen her rise. She is ready not just to wear the crown, but to guide us forward." Even with his support, not everyone was convinced. One council member, a woman with piercing gray eyes, stood abruptly. "We cannot follow someone simply because they claim a destiny," she said sharply. "The temple may have changed her, but the world outside tests power differently. Will she bend or break when the kingdom calls?" Alara's gaze met hers, unwavering. "I have already faced trials no one else could endure," she said. "I have seen shadows, spoken with echoes of the past, and emerged stronger. My strength is not for myself alone, it is for this kingdom, for those who cannot stand alone, and for the future we must build together." A silence followed her words. The council exchanged glances, uncertainty clouding their expressions. But the crown gleamed brighter, and the room seemed to acknowledge her presence, as if the temple itself had sent a silent command. She was no longer a girl pushed into darkness. She was a sovereign. Then, from the far corner of the chamber, a shadow moved. The figure Elara had sensed in the village appeared now, stepping into the flickering torchlight. Their cloak was dark, their features hidden, yet the weight of their gaze settled on her like a challenge. "Elara," the figure said, voice low and deliberate, "you carry the crown, but you have yet to face the world that wishes to test it." The council members murmured nervously, sensing a tension they could not yet see. Elara held her ground, hand brushing the crown. "And I will face it," she replied. "I have faced shadows within the temple. I will face the shadows outside as well." The figure nodded slowly. "Then know this, the kingdom is filled with forces that will resist your rise. Ambition, fear, and envy will not bow to power lightly. Your wisdom will be tested as much as your strength." Elara's heart steadied. She had prepared for this, in part, through the trials of the temple. But she also knew that the real challenge would test her spirit, her leadership, and her ability to guide without losing herself. "Very well," she said. "Let the kingdom see what I can offer, not through fear, but through deeds. I will lead with clarity, courage, and fairness. And I will show that power does not come from the crown alone, it comes from the choices we make." Kale stepped closer again, giving her a reassuring nod. "And we will stand with you," he said quietly, almost a whisper. "Not out of fear, but out of trust." The council leader leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. He had been cautious from the beginning, yet he could feel the shift. The air around her was no longer filled with hesitation, it was filled with certainty, presence, and authority. Slowly, he nodded. "Very well, Elara. We will give you the chance to prove yourself. But understand this. Power comes with responsibility. And responsibility demands sacrifice." Elara inclined her head respectfully. "I understand, and I accept it." The shadowed figure stepped closer. "Then, your trials outside have begun," they said. "Enemies you do not yet see will emerge, and allies may falter. The crown will guide you, but your heart must guide the crown." Elara inhaled deeply. The words were not threatening. They were a warning. And she accepted it. This was the final test. To bring the lessons of the temple into the real world. To command respect and loyalty, and to balance strength with compassion. As she stepped forward, the council chambers seemed to bend subtly to her presence. The whispers of those who had doubted her fell silent, replaced by a cautious recognition that the girl they had underestimated was now a force to be reckoned with. Outside the chamber, news of her return spread quickly. Citizens paused in the streets, staring toward the castle as if drawn by an invisible thread. Merchants whispered. Children ran to peer from doorways, and elders nodded knowingly. Something had changed, not just Elara, but the perception of what she represented. The pack, who had once doubted her, now walked beside her openly. Their loyalty had been tested and earned not through fear, but through the clarity of her vision and the quiet authority of the crown. Kale remained closest, silent yet steady, a reminder of trust and the bond they had forged through trials. In the days that followed, Elara faced challenges she had not anticipated. Rival lords sought to undermine her, seeing the crown as a prize to claim. Magical disturbances hinted at powers unsettled by her rise, and whispers from distant lands suggested that her reputation had reached ears far beyond the kingdom. Yet each trial reinforced her strength. She commanded attention with words, decisions, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing who she was. The crown's energy guided her, but it was her courage, her wisdom, and her compassion that shaped her actions. And through it all, Kale stayed close. Their bond, forged in the forests and tempered in shadows, grew into a quiet understanding, a connection that balanced respect, loyalty, and a deep, unspoken affection. Neither spoke of it, but both knew that their partnership had become a pillar of her newfound authority. One evening, as the sun set and bathed the city in gold, Ilara stood on the castle balcony, gazing out over the kingdom. The wind played with her hair, carrying scents of forests, rivers, and distant mountains. She felt the weight of the crown, the pulse of its magic, and the quiet reminder that her journey was ongoing. Kael stepped beside her, silent. "Do you ever wonder," he asked quietly, "if they will ever accept you fully?" Ilara shook her head, a small smile on her lips. "Acceptance is not the point," she said. "I am no longer seeking their approval. I am building the future I believe in, and those who wish to join me may do so freely. The rest will see the consequences of their choices soon enough." Kael nodded, respect and admiration in his eyes. "Then we are ready," he said. Ilara turned her gaze back to the horizon. The sky glimmered with the first stars of night, and the kingdom spread beneath her like a tapestry of possibilities. She felt a sense of completion, not because the world was perfect, but because she had found her place in it. She had survived the temple, faced betrayal, awakened her power, and now faced the world with courage. Yet even as she stood there, a shiver ran through her spine. The shadowed figure she had seen in the council chambers had not left. From somewhere in the darkness, unseen but known, eyes watched her. They were patient, observant, and powerful. And in their presence, Ilara understood one undeniable truth. The crown had awakened her, but the world would continue to test her. Always. She exhaled, steadying herself. Challenges would come. Allies and enemies would appear. But she had grown, she had learned, and she had claimed her place not through fear or chance, but through choice, courage, and the trials she had endured. The crown pulsed gently, as if in agreement. Ilara smiled faintly, the fire of destiny alive in her chest. She was no longer a girl pushed into darkness. She was a sovereign, a leader, a force that the world could not ignore. And somewhere, far beyond the castle walls, a new adventure awaited, one that would test her power, her wisdom, and her heart. But she would face it with the strength she had earned, the allies she had chosen, and the crown that had awakened everything she was meant to become. Ilara's journey had transformed her completely. She had emerged from the temple, not only with power, but with vision, purpose, and the clarity of a ruler born from trials. She knew the challenges ahead would be great, but she also knew this: no one could push her into darkness again. She had claimed her destiny, and the kingdom would rise with her. And in the quiet of the night, with stars glittering above and the kingdom stretching before her, Ilara whispered to herself, "I am ready for everything that comes." The crown pulsed once more, a gentle glow in the moonlight, and the temple's magic lingered still, a reminder that she was no longer just a girl. They had pushed her into the shadows, but she had emerged as a sovereign, a queen, and a force that could shape the world itself.